Welcome to Recipe Tester. Today we try to make truffles with 5 different recipes. I went in completely blind. I didn't know how truffles are supposed to be or how they are made and stopped myself from looking into them at all so I can be as impartial as possible. I decided going from the simplest to the most detailed recipe to see how it all changes. First we got 2 recipes from BuzzFeed. Then the second one was from Sugary Sweets, as I love minty stuff. After that we go fruity with OMG Chocolate Desserts' recipe, and we conclude with Sally's Baking Addictions recipe, which is both dark chocolate and with lime. Let's start with the BuzzFeed recipe. I had seen them and I always wanted to try the recipe, but the instructions are pretty bare bones to be honest. You'll need 360 gram bittersweet chocolate, 250 milliliters heavy cream. Add the chocolate and heavy cream into a pot and slowly smelt them until combined. I guess you could use a microwave as well, but I always find working with fire easier to control. A weird part here was pour the mixture into a regular bread pan. I mean, any pan should do. Well, I trusted these guys and found mine and poured it in. Now it says that it should stay 1 hour in the fridge. Well, I can tell you that it was still way too soft to do anything they said. I just put it into a freezer and finally got the consistency they had in the video. Oh god, the ice cream scooping was a nightmare. Forming the balls is nice, but if you don't get it out, there's really no use doing that. I opted to scooping equal pieces into a tray with a spoon and put them into a freezer again, to be able to form it into anything presentable. After that, I tried to be fast about it and formed them into balls as much as I could and rolled them in cacao powder. As frustrating as the whole forming thing was, I really liked the taste and consistency of this. But apart from that, the recipe is really lacking. Not the best start for a truffle beginner if you ask me. Now off to the second one. This one is the white chocolate chip truffle by BuzzFeed again. You need 360 gram white chocolate, 75 milliliters heavy cream, and 120 grams chocolate chips. Again, you melt the chocolate with the heavy cream until it gets smooth and pour it into a bread pan. As you can see, I was frustrated enough to use a glass pan that was lying around at home. After the 20 minutes of staying in the fridge, it was still too warm for chocolate chips for some reason, and it got real messy. I opted to form them directly with my hands and be done with it. I let them rest for a bit in the freezer again and dipped them into molten chocolate afterwards. It looked better than I expected, to be honest. The whole mess with BuzzFeed recipes could have been avoided if they could state how the consistency should be. Maybe my freezer is a better option than your fridge, but maybe I'm just expecting too much. After that adventure, I was glad to get something different with Sugary Sweets' recipe. You'll need 120 gram labneh or cream cheese, 200 gram powdered sugar, 115 gram butter, some green food coloring, 1 teaspoon mint extract, and 80 gram chocolate chips. I really loved this recipe because the instructions were clear and actually worked. I beat the cream cheese and butter until it got creamy and added the sugar, mint extract, and food coloring. Oh, that damn food coloring. It turned out to be some weird yellow and not green. I was very careful first, as food coloring can get real messy, but apparently it didn't really care to turn green at all. As it was really hot that day, I opted to take out my molds and pour some into them. Then I added the chocolate chips and I scooped out more or less equal pieces and I quote, freeze for about an hour, more is fine. Those 3 words at the end are so reassuring, I tell you. Then I dipped these delicious yellowish, not green, pieces into molten chocolate and enjoyed eating them afterwards. Like I said, I really liked this recipe as it was clear was wanted and no special equipment like ice cream scoops were required. which is always a plus in my book. If the truffle seems softer than it should look like here, well, the reason for that was that the day I made these was extremely hot and everything was just melting away. That's my luck, I guess. The next one was OMG chocolate desserts, white chocolate blueberry truffles. Well, I didn't have any blueberries around and simply opted to make them with blackberries. You need 260 gram white chocolate, 70 gram butter, 45 gram heavy cream, 30 gram powdered sugar, 40 gram frozen berries, which I ground to a powder. First, I simmered the heavy cream, turned the stove off and added the butter. When that got molten, I added the berry powder and set the pot aside. Then I carefully melted the chocolate according to the instructions and carefully added the berry mixture bit by bit. I tried to have them at about the same temperature, so I had to heat the mixture up a bit. I love all kind of berries, but the color of the blackberries in here were really bland. So I added a bit of pink food coloring just to make it look a bit brighter. I let it cool to room temperature and put it into the fridge to let it cool down completely. When I got it out of the fridge, I scooped out small pieces and formed them into balls. But as my hands were really warm again, I used only my fingertips, not my palms. Then I rolled them into powdered sugar and ta-da! They're done. This one was more detailed and I must say it was good to have a guide on how the temperature should be. As I know, especially with chocolate, that you need a certain warmth for some things to work out alright. The tips are definitely a plus as well. And the last but not least is Sally's Baking Addiction's Dark Chocolate Key Lime Pie Truffles. That name couldn't be any longer. First off, I love that the measurements are both an imperial and metric. I didn't need to measure or calculate at all. You need 396 grams white chocolate, zest of 2 limes. I used lemons because I couldn't find any when I wanted to make this recipe. 30 grams butter, 180 milliliters heavy cream, 15 milliliters lime juice. Again, I used lemon juice, and 509 gram bittersweet chocolate. I need to note here that this is the perfect amount to coat the truffles later on. As this one is the most detailed, I really suggest you directly go read the original recipe, as I'm doing more of a summary or review. At this point, I wished I had started with this one, as a bloody amateur would have understood and made this without a hassle. So I put the zest into the heated cream and let it simmer for a bit. After that, I let it rest for 30 minutes to infuse the cream with that lemony freshness. Meanwhile, the recipe says that I should put the chocolate, juice and butter into a bowl and not stir it. I found that weird, but okay, gonna stick with the instructions. When the 30 minutes have passed, reheat the heavy cream and strain it over the chocolate bowl to remove the zest. Then I quote, gently begin stirring the white chocolate mixture with a rubber spatula in one direction. As I had quite big pieces of white chocolate, I got a bit of hot water under the bowl and stirred until the mixture was smooth. Then off to the fridge. When it has rested long enough, scoop out a bit and form it into balls. It got quite sticky after a while and I embraced the tip to use paper towels. It helped immensely. Then, the usual dipping in the melted chocolate. By the time I got to this recipe, I got myself those dipping tools and I must say it made the whole dipping lots easier. So, what's my final verdict? I must say I enjoyed making them, even though the first basic recipe was a bit misleading without the guidance of the more detailed recipes. I feel like that each of them were good in taste, but I got the best instructions from the Sally Baking Edition. Now that I know how to handle these, I'll probably make the BuzzFeed ones again and not fail horribly. I chose these recipes myself, but I'd like to hear your suggestions. Please write in the comment section below which recipe I should test next. It can be even your own recipe. The links to the recipes I made today are of course in the descriptions below. If you liked the video, feel free to like and subscribe.